What happens if the United States pours nearly $2 trillion into a weapon that is supposed to be unstoppable, only to have it spotted by a piece of junk? Imagine the F-35 Lightning II. It's the crown jewel of the Pentagon, a masterpiece of engineering designed to be a digital ghost. This aircraft is the ultimate silver bullet, built to penetrate the most sophisticated air defenses on Earth without ever leaving a trace on a radar screen. But picture this, a high-stakes training exercise over open water. The pilot is cruising comfortably in his $100 million seat, wrapped in a cocoon of the world's most advanced sensors. He believes he is invisible. He thinks he's operating in a total safe zone. Then, suddenly, the cockpit screams, a master caution light blinks. He's been painted. He's been locked. But the threat didn't come from a futuristic laser or a rival stealth jet. It came from a clunky, rusted radar array built during the Cold War. A system you could probably buy for less than $5,000 at a military surplus auction just caught the world's most expensive predator in its net. This is the slap in the face for modern military strategy. We are taught to believe that money equals invincibility, that enough research and development spending can buy absolute safety. But this single moment creates a terrifying paradox. If a budget bin radar from the 1980s can see the invisible, then what have we actually been paying for? Have we spent decades building the ultimate weapon, or have we just created the world's most expensive target? How is it possible for the most advanced aircraft in history to be this vulnerable? To understand the answer, we have to look past the stealth coding and into the secret war of frequencies. To understand the magnitude of this mystery, you have to understand exactly what the F-35 is. This isn't just another fighter jet. It is the single most expensive project in the history of human conflict. With a total lifetime cost projected at $1.7 trillion, the Pentagon didn't just want a plane, they wanted an insurance policy against every threat for the next 50 years. Think about the brainpower involved here. Tens of thousands of engineers, decades of research, and the combined industrial might of half the Western world. All of it focused on one singular impossible goal: total invisibility. So, how do you make 40 tons of titanium and high-tech composites disappear? It starts with the geometry. Look at the F-35. It looks strange. It's jagged, angular, almost alien. That's not for aesthetics. Every single surface is tilted at a precise angle to ensure that when an enemy radar pulse hits it, that pulse doesn't bounce back to the source. Instead, it's scattered. It's deflected into the emptiness of space. It's like trying to shine a flashlight on a mirror that's tilted away from you. You know the mirror is there, but you can't see the reflection. But geometry is only the first layer of the ghost's skin. The real magic is the black paint. This isn't your standard hardware store spray-on. This is RAM radar absorbent material. It's a top-secret mixture of ferromagnetic particles suspended in a high-tech polymer. When a radar wave hits this skin, it doesn't just bounce, it gets trapped. The material converts the electromagnetic energy into heat. Literally, the F-35 eats radar waves for breakfast. The result of all this engineering is what pilots call a radar cross-section. If an old-school F-15 Eagle is a flying skyscraper on a radar screen, the F-35 is a golf ball. Actually, it's smaller. In some configurations, the F-35 has the radar signature of a sparrow. Imagine trying to find a single bird in the middle of a thunderstorm from 300 miles away. That is the challenge every enemy commander faces, and they call it the digital ghost for a reason. The F-35 doesn't just hide, it sees everything. It's a flying supercomputer. Through a system called sensor fusion, the jet collects data from every direction, not just from its own sensors, but from satellites in orbit, Aegis destroyers in the ocean, and other F-35s in the sky. All that data is processed and projected directly onto the pilot's helmet visor. It gives them God's eye view. They can see through the floor of their own cockpit. They can target enemies they haven't even looked at yet. This isn't just a plane, it's a node in a massive invisible web of American power. This web spans the entire globe. From the deck of a Gerald R. Ford-class carrier in the Pacific to a hardened hangar in the UK, the F-35 is the glue that holds the modern tactical playbook together. It is the ultimate first look, first shot, first kill machine. For decades, this was the consensus: if you have the F-35, you own the sky. Period. End of story. The technology was so far ahead of the curve that it felt like magic. We were told that no traditional radar could ever hope to get a solid lock on this bird. We believed that the age of the dogfight was over because the enemy would be dead before they even knew an American jet was in the same zip code. It was the perfect move on the strategic chessboard. A queen that could move anywhere, strike anything, and remain completely hidden. This was the era of total stealth dominance, a time when the US footprint was so technologically massive that it seemed like the game was already won. But on the other side of the board, the opponents weren't just sitting still. They were watching. They were learning. And they realized that if you can't build a better mirror, you might just need to change the way you shine the light. Because even the most perfect ghost has a shadow. And if you know where to look, that shadow is exactly where the invincibility ends. So, if the US spent trillions to make this jet invisible to the world's best radars, how did a cheap 40-year-old system manage to strip away the ghost's mask? The answer lies in a clever, low-tech counter move that turns the F-35's greatest strength into its ultimate weakness. By reaching into the past, America's rivals have found a way to drag the digital ghost back into the world of the living. And they did it by using the very air we breathe against us. But here's the detail most people miss. To understand how the digital ghost gets caught, you have to stop thinking about the jet and start thinking about the light. For decades, the US has focused on winning the war against X-band radars, those high-frequency, high-precision systems that provide a weapons-grade lock. Stealth is specifically tuned to defeat these. If the radar waves are short and fast, the F-35's skin eats them. But what if the enemy changes the frequency? What if they go back to the dawn of the radar age? This is the counter move, the rise of the antique giants. We are talking about VHF and UHF radars. These systems use massive, long-wavelength pulses. In the 1990s, the West thought these were obsolete because they were too imprecise to guide a missile. But there's a physics problem that even $1 trillion can't solve: Rayleigh scattering. When a radar wave is roughly the same size as the object it hits, the wave doesn't just scatter or get absorbed, it resonates. It makes the entire airframe of the aircraft act like a tuning fork, ringing out a signal that can be seen for hundreds of miles. Because the F-35 is relatively small, its wings and tail fins are the perfect size to vibrate under these long, low-frequency waves. To a high-tech X-band radar, the F-35 is a sparrow. But to an old-school VHF radar from the 1970s, it glows like a neon sign in a dark alley. The ghost doesn't just have a shadow, it has a heartbeat that the enemy can hear from across the border. But the nightmare doesn't stop with old antennas. The real silent killer is a tactic called passive radar. Imagine you're in a pitch-black room trying to hide from someone with a flashlight. That's traditional stealth. You tilt your body so the light doesn't reflect back to their eyes. But what if the room is already filled with light from 1,000 different lamps you don't control? Our world is currently drowning in electromagnetic noise. Cell phone towers, radio stations, digital TV broadcasts, they are everywhere, constantly bouncing off everything in the sky. Passive radar systems don't send out their own signals. They don't shine a flashlight. They simply sit there and listen. They monitor the existing background noise of the atmosphere. When a stealth jet flies through that noise, it creates a shadow, a tiny disturbance in the FM radio or cellular signals. By comparing the signals from multiple towers, an enemy computer can triangulate that shadow with terrifying precision. And because these systems don't emit anything, the F-35's advanced sensors have nothing to detect. The pilot's God's eye view goes blind to the threat because there is no threat signal to pick up. He is being watched by the very air he is flying through, and he has no idea the trap is already set. Now, imagine how a country like Iran or a near-peer rival plays this on the strategic chessboard. They know they can't build a fleet of F-35s. So, they build a web of junk. They take these aging VHF radars, combine them with thousands of passive sensors, and link them together using modern fiber optic networks. This creates a multistatic net. Even if the F-35 deflects a signal away from one radar, it might reflect it directly into the eyes of another sensor 10 miles away. It turns the entire country into a kill zone where stealth is no longer a superpower. It's just a suggestion. And this is where the loitering anxiety really sets in for the Pentagon. Because if the stealth fails, the F-35 is in serious trouble. To make the jet invisible, engineers had to make massive aerodynamic sacrifices. To keep the radar cross-section small, all the weapons have to be carried internally. This limits the payload. To keep the shape angular, the jet is heavy and less maneuverable than the unstealthy fighters of the previous generation. It has a single engine and a high wing loading. In a world where it stays hidden, none of that matters. But the moment the antique web gets a lock, the F-35 stops being a ghost and starts being what critics call a fat duck. It is a slow, lumbering target that can't outrun or outturn the high-speed interceptors or long-range surface-to-air missiles that are now screaming toward its position. Commanders are beginning to realize that the invincibility we bought for nearly $2 trillion might have a shelf life. We stripped the guns off our ships and the maneuverability off our jets because we believed the enemy would never see us coming. We gambled everything on a single invisible card. But the house is starting to change the rules of the game. If a swarm of cheap, old-school sensors can pull the mask off the digital ghost, then the entire US strategy of air dominance begins to crumble. If the ships have nowhere to hide and the jets are no longer invisible, the crushing strategic pincer we've relied on for decades becomes a liability. We've built a high-tech armor that can be pierced by a wooden spear. It's a logistical and tactical nightmare that keeps planners up at night. Are we walking into a trap of our own making? Did we spend 50 years and $1 trillion to be outsmarted by the 1970s? The suspense is suffocating. If the F-35 can be seen, it can be killed. And if it can be killed, the American way of war is over. But just when it seems like the chessboard is lost, the US activates a second strategy, one that doesn't rely on being hidden at all. Because if you can't hide from the light, you have to find a way to make the enemy go blind. And that is where the real ace comes out of the sleeve. You might wonder if the F-35 is so vulnerable to these old tricks. Why is the US still doubling down on the program? The answer is simple. Because the Ghost has a secret weapon that has nothing to do with its skin. It's a tool designed to take the fight directly to the sensors themselves, turning the enemy's web into a cage. But if you think the Pentagon spent nearly $5 trillion on a fancy coat of paint, you're looking at the wrong part of the jet, because stealth is just the shell. The real heart of the F-35 is its brain, and that brain is equipped with the ANA-SQ-239, a system we call the reality eraser. You see, the F-35 doesn't just sit there and hope its skin absorbs the radar waves. It is an active hunter. When those antique VHF radars or passive sensors finally think they found a shadow, the F-35 does something terrifying. It doesn't run, it fights back in the digital realm. This is electronic warfare at its most lethal. Instead of hiding, the F-35 uses its massive computing power to analyze the enemy's signal and then sends back a lie. It doesn't just jam the signal with noise, it rewrites the data. It creates dozens of ghost targets on the enemy's screen. It makes the radar believe the jet is 5 miles to the left, then 10 miles to the right, then nowhere at all. It burns through the enemy's sensors by suffocating them with false realities, while the enemy commander is staring at a screen full of phantoms. Trying to figure out which one is real, the F-35 has already won the game. This is the ultimate ace. The F-35 acts as a high-tech pointer for the big hitters. It doesn't need to carry a monstrous payload internally to be effective. It just needs to see. The moment an enemy radar turns on to try and unmask the ghost, it effectively screams its own location into the void. The F-35 picks up that scream, calculates the exact coordinates, and shares them instantly with the Arsenal planes, the B-52 Stratofortress, or the B-1 Lancer loitering hundreds of miles away, far outside the reach of any defense. Within seconds, a barrage of cruise missiles is already erupting from the horizon, homing in on the radar's exact position. The very act of trying to see the F-35 is what signs the enemy's death warrant. The vulnerability of the bird isn't a flaw, it's a lure. It is a calculated bait designed to force the enemy to reveal their hand. The F-35 isn't just a fighter, it is the architect of the battlefield. It turns the enemy's complex web of sensors into a simple target list. It proves that in modern war, it doesn't matter how much light you shine if the enemy can choose what your eyes are allowed to see. This level of strategic depth is why the US continues to dominate the chessboard. It's not just about being a ghost, it's about being the one who controls the graveyard. But as the smoke clears and the digital dust settles, a larger question remains about the future of global conflict. In this world of invisible predators and digital lies, where does the human element fit in? In the end, is it the trillion-dollar algorithm or the grit of a human commander that decides the fate of a nation? We've seen the F-35's digital dominance and the clever low-tech traps designed to bring it down. So where do you stand? Is the American digital ghost truly invincible, or is the era of stealth being dismantled by the raw creativity of the antique world? Let us know in the comments below. We dissect the world's most complex systems to bring you the truth behind the tech. Thanks for watching.